everybody. Welcome to the You're Too Valuable podcast. This is one of your great hosts here, Gregory. As you can see, there's three of us here, and we have, well, if you can see us, some people can't see us, so you might actually just be tuning in. But we're missing one of our normal hosts, so we have another guest host that was here last week. And so, thank you very much for coming in and joining us. It's because our dear friend Robbie is feeling a little bit under the weather this week, and so we wanted to still come to you and say hello. So I'll let the other ones introduce themselves. But again, hello, how's it going? And other hosts, introduce yourself.
Hey y'all, I'm Jesse. It's good to be here again and glad that we were able to get some things together and have our good friend and guest Justin back on. Welcome, Justin.
Hi, I'm really happy to be a part of it again. I really enjoyed last week, and I'm excited about this topic as well.
Yeah. So our topic today is about leaving loudly, and what do you guys think about leaving loudly? Do you think is it good? Is it bad? Or I don't. I have my thoughts. Go ahead, kick it off.
Um,
You
I guess I'm kind of indifferent when you think about leaving loudly because I feel like that there are situations where it's absolutely unacceptable, and then in some situations, I think it's needed to an extent for people to understand, how you feel. So
No,
I'm
no,
I'm
no. I don't think
I'm
it's. I don't think
I'm
it's
I'm on the
necessarily
fence.
needed in any situation.
I'm on the
So I'm gonna.
fence.
I'm gonna disagree with you right there. But okay, continue.
you know me. You know my thoughts. You got to let them know what's going on. you know it.
Oh, Jesse,
it
we know you let him know.
but I get
Well,
the respectful part as well. But also, if you've gone to many lengths, and this is some of the stuff we'll probably be talking about, to try and mediate what's going on in the reason that you want to leave, if it's because of you're not enjoying your work anymore, you're having issues with your boss, something like that. If you've tried to go around the mediating process and they aren't having it, then you got to let everybody know. You got to make sure you let your coworkers know so they can watch their backs too.
what? No, no, no. Okay, okay. So I see that Jesse is all about leaving loudly, and knowing Jesse for as long as I have, I know he's left loudly quite a bit. And so there have been some very loud exits that we have had or we have discussed. And I'm pretty sure Justin has had some good instances in his career, especially inside of retail, where people have left pretty loudly. And so I don't know. Do you guys have a good story or a good example that you have that we could talk about on how somebody left, or Jesse on how you left loudly? I'm excited to hear about this one.
I mean, honestly, with my last position, I had tried mediating, tried bringing up some issues that I was trying to work around, and I was completely. I wasn't even given the option to have mediation. It was they didn't want to deal with my concerns, and that was it. And so in turn, because I had built some really good relationship with coworkers and other managers that I was managing was under me, I let them know that they needed to be careful and watch their backs because we were obviously working for a company that wasn't willing to just listen and try to work through some stuff. And the reasons to me being unknown, I'm not too sure. I thought I was in a pretty good position at my and had gotten promotions, had gotten raises in less than a year being there, had thought I had good working relationships, and when you usually think that you have something to stand on, but you
Mm-hmm.
go against whatever the corporate leaders are doing, and we've talked about this before. They don't want to hear it sometimes, and they don't want to learn how to improve. And for me, that's I'm out. One other distinct time I can talk about really quick was I had been at a place and I
See,
was
everybody, we
turning
knew that
around.
Jesse had some examples. So, so
I was turning around the business that I was given to manage, and I got written up less than 6 months in. I mean, like how for performance issues and
yeah.
them wanting me to work 12-hour days, 6 days a week, and no, goodbye. So that's how that goes.
And Justin, do you have a big in retail? Have you gotten some good examples or some good stories on what you've seen in the retail world? Because I know that's got to be really tough.
Well, when I think about one specific instance with an associate, they we decided to part ways with them from the company for attendance reasons.
yeah.
Um, Very basic policy, basic, clear, clear communication, clear understanding, documentation. I had another. I was actually um, having the conversation with the associate, and I had a witness in the office with me.
Oh, that's good.
The young lady stood up, and the young lady stood up, began to scream, took her vest off, threw it on the floor. The office was kind of located at the front of the retail location where I was working
Mhm.
at. Um, Proceeded to yell and scream and use profanity, where customers were able to see, other associates were able to see it. Very, very bitter situation to be a part of, especially because I went the extra mile with that associate to be able to
Yeah.
help them and explain it to them. So, like, I kind of feel like leaving Lively is, um, it's kind of two sides to it. One of the biggest things that I think could be wrong with it is you are you have to think about the audience and who you're doing that to. Everyone involved in that situation is not necessarily tied to the reason why you're leaving the company or wherever you're leaving. So I know that for personally, I felt bad. I felt like I had done
Yeah.
something wrong. I felt like I had disrespected them in some kind of way, because I really stuck by that associate, and I felt like it was very disrespectful to me, as a leader who had done so much to support that associate. So while I feel like there are instances and situations where you may think that that's the best method, there is another side to it that it could be disrespectful and not the way to handle it.
Well, yeah, and thank you. That actually brings me to a point that I wanted to make for both of you is when somebody tends to exit loudly, it creates a big uproar. And I know that's probably the point of leaving loudly and kind of just quitting and throwing everything up in the air. Or if you get terminated, then that's another way. Is it respectful of your teammates that you worked with before? Is it respectful for the company? And I know a lot of you out there are going to be like, who cares? I'm leaving, or, they just fired me. Why do I need to be respectful for the company that I'm in? And to me, it's like, don't burn those bridges that you're going to have. I know that it might be satisfying in the moment and you might really enjoy it. It might let off a lot of steam. You never know who you're going to be working with in the future or working for in the future. And that's a big thing that I've seen is, you know, uh, if you work in or you start getting higher and higher into the corporate ladder, you may come to a point where you start burning bridges with some of those leaders. And let me tell you, they all talk. And so if you're burning that bridge, then they're going to be like, oh no, so and so did this and this and this. And so it makes things look bad. It may feel great in the moment. I just don't understand, of that. And I I think even for my personal aspect in my early part of my career, I may have burned a couple of bridges, and it's not good. It doesn't feel good. And then you go back and you're like, man, I wish I would have done something a little bit better, and not left as loudly. And I see Jesse over here shaking his head. I don't know, for those who are listening, you know,
Yeah,
have
I
you had an instance where you see
definitely.
where it's like burning bridges and things?
Oh yeah, no, and I definitely agree with like not wanting it to be a huge outburst in front of a bunch of people, that sort of thing. I definitely don't think that that's professional, but people do that and end up going viral for it all the time online. Videos that we've all seen of people loudly quitting their jobs and doing all kinds of
Reality
different,
entertainment, baby.
exactly,
Reality entertainment.
doing lots of
So do you think so?
destructive things on their way out and everything.
Oh
But
yeah.
you definitely, if it's in a specific industry or you work in a small town, or I mean, there can be some consequences to doing it that sort of way, instead of just letting the company know, hey, I'm having to move on for reasons that, either if you would like to discuss, we can, make the decision and try to make it professional. But a lot of
Yeah.
times people are so, they've tried, I believe, and have tried to have honest conversations with their bosses about what's going on in either their work life or something that is bothering them from their personal life that's affecting their work life, and they get shut down a lot. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, where a lot of those big outbursts can come from. But it can do
Yeah.
some damage.
Well, it's kind of funny. I didn't even realize this until you said it. But even like in a smaller or a smaller town, smaller city that you may live in, you may even know the whole dang town. You may know, a pretty good portion of the people that live there. And of course, I mean, anybody who's ever lived or been around a small town, everybody talks about everything when you're there.
Yep.
So, and Justin, what about you? Do you think it, even in the retail or any of the other environments, about burning those bridges? Do you think that that's something that really affects you in your career?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Especially when you work for a retail company, a retail chain, because everyone knows somebody that knows somebody that's a manager at this store, that's a team lead at
Hmm.
this store. So once you do one thing, it's kind of like, I always made the joke that we're at, my old store's name high school. Because everybody knows and everybody you know, talks about it and different things like that. So I think that by conducting yourself in that way, you definitely burn bridges. And I think we should be clear when we talk about leaving loudly, because there are two ways you could leave loudly. You could leave loudly, like the story I described, where it was literally leaving loudly with making a scene. But you could also leave loudly with rattling the HR chain and the way sending emails and having multiple conversations and conferences and every little
That is
thing
a
that comes
very,
back
very
bounce
good
back.
point there, Justin.
So,
Very good point.
you could leave loudly two different ways. So I've seen it done both ways.
Because they're going to
That's
come in
actually a
right
really
to
good point.
HR to say, hey, we need
Hmm.
you to document this, and how do we need to go about that? What paperwork do we need to fill out? But
Yes.
that just keeps you busy, Greg.
It definitely does, because if there are a lot of people who are CC'd or BCC'd or even two in the two field, when it comes to a very loud resignation notice, it's going to create some waves, and it will definitely, yeah, creating waves is a good way of saying it. And I even say it, like I said, in my earlier part of my career, I did the same thing. I CC'd a lot of the upper management, because it's just like Jesse was saying earlier, you try to have those conversations to fix things or to make things better and overall improve, and it just seems like sometimes those companies just don't want to do it. And uh, I have learned in my career and my advancement, there's ways to doing it, but not every company is going to listen, because you can talk into your blue into the face. And what is that saying? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. It's the same thing for a company, not doing over there. So
Mhm.
let's change about that and talk about what it's nice. What are the pros of actually leaving loudly? And I think Jesse, you were kind of talking about that a little bit earlier about what, and we were just talking about possibly getting things changed. Is that
Right.
a pro?
I mean, some companies, if they really can look at it that way, that they can take it as to look at the um, environment of their workplace and see what their health grade is of it, and if they really can grasp onto that. But a lot of people and upper management leaders are just like, well, that person's gone, let's replace them, you know, get on applications, get hired. It doesn't happen too often. But I think there are some really good companies out there that do like engagement surveys every year, and that have really good leaders who do one-on-ones with their like senior and frontline leadership
Mm-hmm.
weekly, so that you can have a constant check on things and say, hey, Susie is really struggling with this. Like, what can we do to support her? Instead of just, well, Susie just needs to not worry about that and let it go and move on. Well, that's something that Susie's obviously uh, said that she's passionate about. And there has to be a way without it getting to the point of her wanting to just quit and throw her hands up in the air. So I could see that as
Yeah.
a pro coming if leadership is in tune.
That's a big if, a big if leadership is in tune. And Justin, as somebody that's been in a management level in your retail industry and just in your career period, you know, do you think that if somebody left loudly that you could see that as a pro, or is it always considered a con?
Yes, absolutely. Because I think that it just depends on the kind of team that you have and the amount of people that you're over. Everybody has a different effect. You're going to have associates or partners that are very vocal. You're going to have associates and partners
Mhm.
that are that tend to talk in a like everyday laughing kind of matter, or I'm a little upset about this, but it's okay, it's fine. You're gonna have people that are quite frankly very bitter every day that everything is gonna be wrong, and I think that sometimes people's conversation based off of who they are, their topics can be overlooked because I have had instances where I've had an associate that was very passive and that had given me subtle hints or subtle things about different problems and issues that were going on that I didn't take seriously enough. And then when they
Mm.
finally were like, you know what? I'm upset. This is why I'm upset. This is this. I deal with this. I told you this. I told you this. And I'm open enough to be able to admit that I've been over a lot of
You missed
associates,
it.
so I missed it. And so
Yeah.
there are some instances where it forced me to look in the mirror and say, hey, when someone brings you an issue, whether it's somebody that it does that a lot, or just brings it up in a small subtle way, everybody's issue is an issue. So I do
Mm.
feel like that in some instances it just depends on the leader or who your audience, who you're talking to. It can be positive because it keeps you refreshed and keeps your eyes open on how to listen and have effective communication with your team.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with both of you there. That and especially what Jesse was saying is like if and being in HR, sometimes you have those engagement surveys and those exit interviews and those NPS scores, and I know everybody loves hearing those things. And it's pretty interesting that if they're willing, if leadership, senior leadership, your C-suite, senior leadership team is willing to look into it and actually utilize that information, I think it's helpful. And I think that's why some people leave loudly and quit on the verbal side or even on the written side. Justin, as you were saying, there's two different ways of doing it. And so, you know maybe the pro there is that, hey, you can get some people's attention and you can bring this up, and hopefully some things change. Yeah, it's not going to change for you because you're leaving or you're left or you're gone, but that doesn't mean that it can't change for people who are still there. And I think that could be a big pro if somebody can leave loudly and, it not necessarily being vocal, but having that silent leave loudly and just boom, you're gone. And I think that's a good thing. Now, on the flip side, your cons, we did talk about the cons and say that, hey, it can hurt your career. It can damage your career. It can make it bad. What people don't understand is there's some legality reasons to it too that you can get in trouble. I have been in a situation where people, and in my earlier career, where people have been terminated, where we were in a retail store and they damaged product on the way out. That's money. You can get in trouble. You can go to jail. You can get fined. You have to pay that money back. And so that
I mean,
can make things even worse for you in the long run.
and not even necessarily talking about merchandise product, but like character defamation. I mean, you could really say
Mm,
some things that people can retaliate, have legal right to retaliate against you for, that type of behavior. So not just tangible goods, you can also do it to someone's name and cause a whole nother line of problems.
yeah, I would agree with that too because it just you just don't understand. And if something happens and you burn that bridge and then you make something even worse, that's a double edged sword right there. Jesse, do you have anything that you would say that is a good con for leaving loudly?
Yeah, I think that you become the story instead of fixing the problem, and it's a bad example to give to your other associates and things too, and it could also be triggering to others of things that they're happy at the workplace, and then they hear about someone else having a hard time, and that in turn affects them and their performance because it puts in a mentality of, well, that I have the same boss, maybe they're just doing things behind my back that I don't know of, and that's not even the case. So people can start getting
Yeah.
stuff in their heads and have an image of the other managers in the company or the company itself start to tarnish for them, and that can just open a whole new door to things for another associate as well.
I'm just sitting here and I'm thinking about what Robbie would say in the situation. He'd be like, "Oh, f yeah," and of course I'd be like, "Watch that language." I'd be like, "F yeah," you need to leave loudly and just walk out. So that way you can make it known. I'm like, "Oh, Robbie, I don't know how I can hear." And based on y'all's laugh, you can hear that too because he would something he would
Absolutely.
say, and it's just like, oh, I wonder what he would say in this situation. By the way, Robbie, if you listen to this, we are thinking of you. Hopefully, you are feeling better, and we can't wait till you get back. Now, I want to go on and think about some kind of funny experiences or examples. Do you have anything that's funny? And now, folks, I want to preface this just because we're giving you an example of what we said does not mean that, so sorry, I didn't mean to point, does not mean that you should go out there and do any of this because we do not condone any of this. So just so you know. Um, but yeah, any good examples? Anything that's going to make you laugh? I know, Justin. We were talking earlier today, and you had this one example of a video that you saw. Can you? What was that example again?
um, you know, when you work in a big box type store, there's an intercom for you to use to call associates for emergencies, paging of customers in case there is a 911 type situation. So there's a PA, and I happen to be watching something on social media, and a disgruntled associate proceeded to get over the intercom and shout profanities about different departments of that store, different people in that store. She wishes that that she would never, work for an organization like that again. And all I could do was laugh because my background is in retail, and I'm like, wow, the fact that situations really got to an associate that way to make them want to do that. It was I laugh because I have a history in it, but
She
on the
wanted
other
to
side
put
of
people
it,
on blast.
it really is. But I have to
Yeah.
think, as much as I'm laughing, I'm like, that's so sad that she really felt that way. Like she felt she felt pushed in some kind of way. So while it's funny, I still wonder, coming from a management standpoint, what did they do to you? Like, what caused you to feel that way?
Yep.
It was funny, but it's also serious as well too.
So I have a good example. I don't know if this is a good example or kind of a story, but one of my stories was a disgruntled employee got terminated, and this actually is not my story. It was told to me before from one of my previous leaders. Is they were a disgruntled employee and they as in human resources forgot to collect their badge, and they needed to go outside in the car to actually get their badge. And when they came back, they were running around the entire office screaming profanities to the entire office and threatening people inside the office. And it was almost to the point where they actually had to go and call the cops to have that person escorted off the grounds because they were so disgruntled. And that now makes a point to where we now have somebody escort you off, and it's not because we don't trust you. It's just that we don't trust you because we don't know what you're capable of doing. And sometimes people, they leave like this, and then it's personal. Okay, I know I've said this before. It's not personal, but it is personal. And so it's almost like it's a business thing, and if you take your personal aspect out of it, you can understand. But hey, I think Jesse has said this before in another one of our podcasts, is that we this is our money, this is how we make a living, and so yeah, you're gonna make it personal because that's the way that it goes. And uh, I can't see how that person had anything to do because of the way were happening with them, and what happened. But who knows?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of those trick things out there that you can get sent in the mail that people do, glitter bombs and all kinds of different stuff.
Oh, glitter
That's
bombs! No,
that
no, no! I can't believe
uh,
you brought that up. No,
that said, no. So
people,
there's a
do
lot.
not send a glitter bomb. Somebody in HR, I don't want to receive it because I would get glitter everywhere and it would drive me up the wall.
I I
And
I've
stop laughing so
I've
hard,
never heard of this.
Jesse.
I got to do some research on these glitter bombs. I've never heard of this.
No, I cannot
It's
believe you brought that up, Jesse. That's awful.
just something that I've seen online. Um,
Seen online, or has Mr. Jesse over there thought
for
about doing this once or twice, or
for
3 or 4
me,
times?
one thing that I had to send me back equipment and for some extra packing was included with ripped up business cards. So I didn't need those. So I just
Oh
sent
boy!
sent those back to them uh, to have some extra
Here you
packing.
go.
So
Here's a little gift back.
You did that?
um,
No, he would never do anything
not
like
at
that.
all. Again, just an
He heard a
example.
story
Salty.
like that. That's an example. Yeah, yeah. The air quotes. If anybody didn't see that, air quotes. Well, I want to go back to kind of the story that Justin was saying earlier about the non loud version or non-verbal of loud or leaving loudly, and that is either just abruptly quitting or just you know not saying anything. You send in your resignation notice and you're like, today's my last day, and that's it. And that my people, that speaks a lot, especially if you are known as like the office go-to person, or the hard worker, or oh my gosh, what are we going to do now because this person has left? A company may say, oh, hey, whatever, we can train somebody else. But no, that doesn't matter. If you put good work in, it's going to happen. And Justin, have you seen that? Because you were talking about it earlier. Have you have an example for that?
Um, and until we started having this conversation, I always equated leaving loudly to some of Jesse's experiences where it was pretty bold and in your face. But in
Experiences or
hindsight,
examples? Remember, examples.
examples, I don't know, on the last episode, I talked about leaving the previous company that I worked for, and
Yeah.
now that I think back, I didn't really give them a heads up on the fact that I was leaving or
Oh.
that this was the reason why, or I just knew that it was what was best for me. I gave ample time, like a 2 weeks notice, but I really did it. They didn't see it coming for me.
Mhm.
Working for a company for 15 years, holding
Wow,
ever,
15 years.
holding two different team lead positions. I was every assistant manager that was in the building, code general manager, ran multiple stores, worked at different, there were weeks I'd worked at, three, four different stores in different areas doing different things. And I was considered a go-to associate. I was considered a best practice associate. I was considered, I was held in high regard for what I did, out of the respect and how I treated people. And they didn't really see it coming. So now that, I'm kind of looking at the reality and how how on one side I'm saying, no, you shouldn't leave like that. I guess I was a part of that example of leaving loudly by not, communicating that or doing that. So, I know I made a statement when I walked away from a 15-year career.
Wow, you really don't see people lasting 15 years. So yeah, that's definitely something that uh, one, congrats on that. And just as a quick little plug, that's actually our next subject. Next one is job hopping. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Uh,
Mm.
and Jesse, have you seen where people just up and quit, and that speaks more volumes than leaving verbally loud?
I think it can sometimes bring more frustration if you're not able to get a conversation with that associate. You know, unfortunately, we can't take things personal in the workplace. It is a job. It is work. And a lot of times people don't want you to know that they're going to a competitor, possibly, or they just don't want you to know where they're going at all. They're done having you as a person they communicated in their life with, and they're moving on. They're severing their ties, and that's how some people do it. I know some companies have tried to instill like exit interviews. I've had to one of those before. I think it could be a good resource to get a little bit more information to make sure that there's nothing inside of the workplace that was could be improved. Um, and but for the most part, just getting ahead of it and being communicative with your employees and knowing a little bit about their personal how their personal life is going. You don't have to know details all the time, but just having a good um, grasp on the overall health of your employees, I think, is really important. And when people do decide to leave, hopefully it's because they're advancing in their career where they couldn't at your current company. And it's thank you so much for your time with us. We're really happy with everything that you did. We wish you luck in your next adventure, and you leave it at that.
Yeah, those are actually some really good points there, Jesse. Is that you know you don't. It's not necessarily a bad thing to leave loudly if you do it in a respectful manner. Just like Justin was just saying a minute ago is, leaving a career, and you're not able to, even potentially give your 2 week notice and leave without a notice, which is a whole nother story that, I probably need to add to the list of things that I would like to talk about is, that speaks loudly. And that is, leaving loudly.
Mm-hmm.
I know that if you're in a position that you've made, or you brought together, or you've been in a smaller company, that that you need to, you know write down your SOPs or what you do. Somebody may not know how to do it, how to do a tax, how to run payroll, how to, complete an FMLA paperwork. Or if somebody's in the middle of an FMLA paperwork, is that just dropping the ball? And so, that's leaving loudly, because things could also have legal implications on that part as well. And, there are ways that you can leave loudly and do it without ending your career.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking of Robbie, I know Robbie has left a couple of his jobs and had to, leave his jobs very loud because he needed to make a point. And I wish he was here to give us those examples, because I know they're good. And he definitely would have had us laughing. And so, all I can say is it's difficult and it's rough for some people to leave loudly, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Would y'all agree?
Yeah,
I
definitely.
agree. I definitely agree.
What uh what
Definitely
would you say
matters
is
what. Definitely matters like what situation you're in, of course, too. You know, if you've already got another job, then you can kind of have a little bit more leniency with how you go about doing it. Yeah. But if you don't have anything in front of you, either you're getting let go loudly and it's a big disruption to your life,
oh, letting go loudly? I
and
forgot about
they're
that.
the company's letting you have it. uh but most of the times they're not gonna have anything much to say to you because they've already discussed it in the background, and it's just going to cause more problems to discuss it with the associate that you're letting go. So that's a whole nother topic. But it try to put yourself in a good position to where you're walking into something where you have an established next job or opportunity, or in the final talks with something that's going to help you out.
Well, how do you think it's possible, or how would y'all say it's good to get your point across without being negative? Leaving loudly without ending your career per se, or
Mm-hmm.
making a fool of yourself. Because I mean, that's the way that I look at it. Is sometimes if you're going to leave loudly and be disrespectful loudly, as in verbally loudly, you're making a fool of yourself. But you know, how can you leave loudly without ending your career and make a good point of, hopefully something changes?
Mm-hmm.
Mm. I feel like in conversation, you can have a tactful
Mm-hmm.
conversation with facts and evidence to back up what you're saying, and
Exactly.
say exactly what you're feeling and thinking in a professional way that may be perceived as being loud, but you're really just pointing out the reality of what it is. So it's all in how you go about it. You can leave loudly in a respectful way, depending on how you present what you're, trying to present. Um, we've all had little leaders that we always talk about. I mean, and this is another topic that we need to discuss having is open door policy.
Right.
um that
Hmm.
is always a topic of open door policy, but we've had leaders that in your face blatantly close those doors on you, and
Hmm.
so you really don't ever
or
get a chance to get your point across. So
or use it
I think
against
having those
you.
yeah, so I think presenting it in a tactful, respectful manner that doesn't, using the proper micro messaging, with paying attention to your tone, your facial expression, but basically just having a conversation with them, and not backing down when they try to close the door on you.
Okay, so that kind of brings me to my last question that I have is if, not if, why would you do that if you're leaving? What's the point? Why would you want to do that? It's the company. Goodbye, sayonara. You're done, or you just fire me. What the flip do I care? I don't want to deal with this anymore.
Well,
You just fired me. So why even
well,
ruffle those feathers or do that?
it's it's kind of, and this is such an elementary type of comparison, but it's almost like in the middle of a breakup, a bitter breakup, in a love relationship, even though you know that you're not going to want to talk to that person anymore, you're going to walk away from that person, you still want them to know why you're upset, and the things that they did, because you want to change for someone else. So the fact that you're leaving, it makes you feel like, hey, they could potentially do this to someone else. Maybe they
Mm,
will get the message by the way that I'm presenting this, that, hey, something in this organization or something about the way they were led was not right. So, yes, you're leaving, but you want to try to change that for the next person so that they don't have the same experience you did. So I think it is still important that, hey, you did me wrong. I'm not staying around for this, but I just want to tell you just how much I felt disrespected, how much I felt like I couldn't work here or it was unbearable or whatever the case may be. You could potentially, and like I said earlier, it depends on the leader and how they're going to receive it. All of this is contingent on how it's being perceived,
Hmm.
mm.
you know. Um, but I know for me, I've had associates say things to me that opened my eyes to something that I didn't see. So, yes, just because you're leaving, you still want to try to change that for somebody else so that they don't have the same experience.
Yep, I agree. I completely agree with that. It's
Yeah,
about getting it out, and whether it should be to your past job, current job, or therapist or friend in the future is beyond. But again, I think a lot of us do that to have want the other person or the company that we're walking away from to be improved.
yeah, and I think if we've learned or we kind of talked about anything, or if you want to take away anything from this conversation, I think it's be respectful. If you want to leave loudly, there's ways of doing it, where you don't burn your bridges, or where you don't end your career, or where you don't damage your reputation, or even make things legally bad for you. And
Hmm.
there's ways that you can do that. And I think that's something that you can do. I mean, we've all given some great examples on how you can do that. And so I know it may feel really good in the moment to leave verbally loud and disrespectful, but in the long term, I don't think that that's going to be beneficial for you and your career moves and your career
Right.
advancement. So if anything, I would recommend saying, if you want to leave loudly, do it respectfully, and do your best here if that's what you can, and try to do those. Um, any final words from you two?
I mean, I would just say that, I guess to sum it up, sometimes leaving loudly can be effective if done the correct way.
You have that little caveat in there, that little
there,
asterisk in there.
there's
Like, wait a minute.
always a caveat to wise words. There's always a caveat to that. But yes, leaving loudly can be effective if done the correct way.
Yeah, I would just
Well,
say
I go ahead.
to try and have those conversations before it even gets to you. You took the job for whatever sort of reason. Obviously, we need the paychecks, but if you move forward and you want to try to better the situation that you're in, unless you're going for a promotion, you got something else that's better for you, that's going to pay more, try your best to mediate with your boss or with the person that you're having the differences with, or um, to make it not only better for you to go to work every day, but also those interactions with your boss and other coworkers to have a better synchronicity in the workplace.
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely well said to both of you. And to wrap up, I want to say thank you very much, Justin, for coming in, stepping in. It was a joy having you back on again, and your smiling face. For those of you who can't see or are just listening to the podcast, he does have a smiling face that just makes you light up whenever you see it. So I really appreciate it, Justin, for being here. And I wanted to kind of just remind everybody to subscribe, to comment, to share these videos with everybody, so that way we can get out there, and that way more people can see and hear us. We love talking with you all. It was a last minute change to get Justin here. So this tells you how much we love it and how much we want to continue doing this for y'all. But share, like, and comment on those. Next week
Send
we
us your
kind of
stories,
preview this.
stories at
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you.
your2val.com.
Oh yeah, stories at your2val.com. I forgot about that. That was that Robbie did that. See, we're missing Robbie here. I can't believe I would ever say that, but we are missing Robbie. Please, please, nobody tell him I said that. He will never, never let me live that down. But next week we're talking about job hopping. And is it a stigma or is it savvy? Something that we want to discuss and talk about. I think that that's something that's gonna, definitely sit there. I think it's going to be interesting, and I can't wait to talk about it because there's a lot of different things out there for you. But appreciate it, everyone. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time
Thanks for listening,
on
everybody.
your Too
Thank y'all
Valuable
for having me.
podcast. Yay! Bye, everyone.
Bye.